And joining me in this panel today is Mr. Malay Nirav. He's a senior sports commentator. Mr. Rahul Banerjee from the Asian Age, and Mr. V. Srivatsa from the Indo-Asian News Service. Welcome to the program, three of you, please. Sir, let's start it with you, Mr. Nirav. Since this is now, as of now, it has been seen as the best performance ever by the Indians, at least in this Olympics. What is your assessment, sir?
My assessment is that it's not only from the point of view of winning the medals and the number of medals, but also one thing that we have noticed in these Olympics is that the Indian athletes have raised their bars. So the standards have gone up. Look, ever since Olympics started, in the track and field, we've had just 5 people going to the finals. This year, we had another 2, Vikas Gowda and Krishna Punia. We had Irfan Todi, who was on the 10th position in the 20 kilometers. This particular where I consider the Indian sports to be at its best ever since we have started participating in Olympics.
Mm-hmm. India has been taking part in the Olympics for the last 92 years. But this nation of 1 billion plus people, we haven't been able to secure as many medals as we could have, sir. What is your assessment, Mr. Banerjee?
I think we should need to first put this in perspective. We constantly juxtapose 1.2 billion versus number of medals, which is not fair. We are not a sporting nation. A large percentage of our population spends energy on survival. So it's overall, I think I agree with large. This has been a positive Olympics for India. Yes, it is a disappointment given the pre-departure hype and so on and so forth. But I think the real fallout or the real fruits of what we are seeing in 2012, we will see at Rio in 4 years' time, at the next Olympics. Because there were a lot of very bright spots, particularly among the younger lot, who have made a good mark over here. And if very positive of 4 sports where we could have, and a very promising young man has come out in the 20-kilometer walk. He did tremendously well, finished 10th, or came out of nowhere. I think only even 2 years from now at the next stage.
Expectation, in fact, expected better from the London squad, sir. And as everyone is now saying and probably started saying after our hockey performance was that Olympics is a different ball game altogether. You can't just rate it with any other performance or any other platform.
Anyway, I think we should keep hockey aside for a while. The biggest thing you should look at it is the first time there's so much of expectations and which is not out of place. And the biggest thing as I see is first time you saw any amount of confidence among the athletes who have gone. Everybody was staring at you, they were looking at saying that I'm going to get it. And they're not worried about, see the confidence with which they have gone. And there's so many aspirants, so many people. Americans are mad. They're looking at the college sport and all. They think that is the level from there. The athlete, of course, in America that's what happens. But in Caribbean, we look at the schools. Our school meets are far, far superior to the American college age things, he said. And that's exactly what I look. See, unless we used to be local sport. Well, and it's really look at it. If athletes are really hoping that we can do, that itself is a big plus for me.
Okay, there are 2 questions here. One is around the sporting culture. We'll come to that a little later. But about the medals, sir. Are these Olympic medals really a benchmark or some sort of a to judge a nation's strength and its success? And how exactly do you look at it in terms of the Indian perspective? Because we never look beyond any, we ask for from our players is a medal, generally.
Right. Look, ever since Olympics have started, Olympics and medals at Olympics have been viewed in different perspective by different nations. In the Cold War era, it was one of the major propaganda methods utilized by especially the Eastern Bloc. So if Cuba won medals, the message was to tell America that only you can't win medals, we can also win medals. Soviet Union was the biggest power. Now what is China doing? You see, they are trying to project their nation's strength by winning Olympic medals. In India, Olympic medals have never been the priority. And for right reasons, because you see, here is a country which is still struggling to come up to that level where the fundamental basic needs of the society are met. Now, I'll give you examples from this present Olympic squad. Look at some of these faces. No, they come from such humble backgrounds. Irfan Todi is for one. And then again, yesterday we were watching this young lad, 18-year-old from Sonipat, Amit Kumar. I've been following this boy ever since he was, say, 13 or 14, when Satpal identified his talent and brought him to Chhattisgarh Stadium. Do you know that his father, who owns 4 buffaloes and sells milk, used to travel 70 kilometers on a bicycle carrying milk and fruits for his son? And he continued to do so for full 5-6 years. Right? There are people coming from humble background. And the government's priorities right now, in 4 years, you cannot do wonders. We started thinking of Olympic medals seriously after Athens and Rajyavardhan Singh Rathore. Maybe after Leander Pace and very healthy sign indeed. About it. Yes, it is a very healthy sign indeed. And the fact is, I look at it, you may call it a very cynical way, but the thing is that if our expectation levels have gone up, that also means a lot. Why are we expecting medals from our athletes?
No, it's very important also to look at the 81 member contingent, as I said. The strength of this group, the entire group that went this time, when you talk about the London squad, what will it be really remembered for? The young talent, the talents that we saw, maybe in the form of Amit Kumar or someone like Mary Kom? Individual medals, only lately we have started seeing it, as he said, whether it was Beijing or...
Maleshwari actually one
that's
started,
right. Yeah.
Leander that turned it Atlanta. So from that, in that sense...
Interesting thing, sir. I would like to take your perspective on that. Time for a very short break here in Public Forum. Please stay tuned. Welcome back to Public Forum. In Public Forum today, a discussion on India's performance in London Olympics. So let us very quickly take a look at the records that have been set this time. Vijay Kumar, he won the silver medal in men's 25-meter rapid fire pistol event, and in fact this made him the 3rd Indian ever to win individual silver medal. Saina Nehwal became the first Indian to win a medal in badminton at Olympics, as well as Mary Kom she also scripted history by becoming country's first woman boxer to win medal at the Olympics. But sir, before going into the break, Mr. Srivatsa, we were talking about the talent that were the part of this Indian squad that went for Olympics this time. There are a lot of stories behind each one of them. Say, for example, I was reading about Mary Kom, came across some very wonderful instances from her life, whether it's personal in nature or it's the kind of problem that she had to face, and maybe the kind of inspiration that she now would be giving to the sporting culture, to the women in Manipur, coming from a state which really deserves and needs that inspiration. So what is it that's so typical about an Indian player and his or her representation on a platform like Olympics?
I'll tell you. First time when I met any of these athletes at an Olympic Games or an Asian Games or slightly better, of course, was that they were hiding from the journalists actually. They would never see you, and they felt...
And certainly now we keep hockey aside for quite long. In the next segment, we are certainly going to talk about the Indian hockey team's performance. In Public Forum today, a discussion on India's performance in London Olympics. And our doors are now open for you. If you want to ask something to our panelists, you can call us on the number, that is 1-800-115313. Now let's start with our performance in the Olympics. Mr. Srivatsa, at least as we were talking about cricket, for the time being, I'm sure since we are a hockey team, they do a lot of things, but then when you start talking about the performance, well, it is only about this hockey team which has said that the performance of the Indian hockey team this time in the London Olympics was the worst ever, sir. What is your assessment of
worst
what went wrong with
analysts tackling the issue? We must go deep into our performance and we carry out a serious review.
But there's some problem with
let me deal with hockey first.
Yes, Mr.
Hockey first. Now, as far as our dismal performance in hockey is concerned, as far as our dismal performance in hockey is concerned, the only golden solution is let us assign the responsibility of hockey to government of Punjab, state government of Punjab. Hockey was in ancient times in the blood of Punjabis, and it is the game of Punjabis. It should be every Punjabi's head hangs in shame at the performance of
Colonel Chopra, his point of view, though we would certainly want to really know here, Mr. Nirav, as to what kind of Right. Olympic medal on less, too much to ask for given the sporting tradition and the culture that we have in our country. What kind of reforms do you think that now the government should be thinking about? I'm glad at least all of you talked about the huge amount of funds, the money that has gone into, whether it's the exposure, the international exposure that probably not just our cricketers, but the sportsmen presently is getting. But what more needs to be done?
Well, first of all, this medal-centric approach needs to be put aside.